Hello, you beautiful humans. Welcome back to It's Got Pockets. This is season 2. This is the podcast for you, for women who are driven, time poor, always on, holding the sky up, women who are not done yet, women who are purpose hungry, but women who are done with surface level empowerment, women who want truth, connection, and practical inspiration that meets you where you actually are. And I am your host. I'm Sarah Knight, leadership and transformation coach, consultant, and disruptor for good. Let's crack on. This episode is brought to you by the frankly fabulous Birkdale Insurance Group. They're a brilliant people-first business, and for them, that means having the important conversations about who gets a seat at the table. Let's crack on. Hello, you beautiful humans. Welcome back to It's Got Pockets. And here we are today with a lady, a lovely lady. Do we even call ourselves ladies anymore? Ladies, women, girls? I hate it when people call me a girl. Anyway, we're going to get into all these discussions. Jillian Reilly is here with me today. She's the author and founder of 10 Permissions and has written an amazing book, which I am nodding my way through and writing all the notes on. And we're going to talk about it a little bit more today. And where we give ourselves permission, where we seek permission and what happens. And also, really importantly, where you got the inspiration to write the book and where it's come from and what's happened. Jillian's flown in from Cape Town last night. Now, the book isn't yet available in the UK, but I think Jillian is going to tell us when it will be available in the UK. But for my listeners across the globe, you can get your hands on a copy now. But Jillian, welcome to It's Got Pockets. It's blinking marvellous to have you here.
Thank you, Sarah. It's blinking marvelous to be here with you, a fellow lady, talking about the permissions that we give ourselves, particularly now as the world is changing in ways that I think are leaving us all kind of breathlessly trying to figure it out and keep up. So yeah, I love the theme of these conversations and I'm thrilled to be here.
Thank you so much. So tell me, where's the 10 permissions come from? Where's your inspiration been?
Yeah, it comes from like way long ago. So kind of briefly, my background is in social change. I'm American, but I went to South Africa in 1993, which I know is like ancient history now, but back in the day I went there. They had their first democratic elections in 1994, and I was this super bright-eyed young, and I will say like high achieving sort of good girl, let me put it that way. Like ticked all the boxes, did everything right, made everybody happy until I didn't, until I was looking at the world going, I think that one, I want to go out and explore the world and be a part of trying to make it a better place. And it so happened that South Africa was going through this like historic transition. And I decided I wanted to get there and like totally deviated from the path that I was on. Disappointed, confused, upset a lot of people along the way, and started this career in helping people navigate profound change. And the theme of permission came about because really early in that journey, when I was working for a really well-funded nonprofit organization, handing out lots of stuff, like giving advice and, funding to try to stimulate people to change, it was like, I realized the one thing that I couldn't give people was permission. That actually it comes down to each person's relationship with him or herself to decide if or how and when they're going to change. And no amount of external stimulus is going to be the thing that, makes you do the things you want to do or have to do. So, yeah, it's got like deep roots in my work. And we can talk more about how it applies now and, how I think it's particularly relevant right now. But yeah, it's for me, it's like the green light to action within a broader growth or change process. And that comes down to ourselves.
And it's hard though, isn't it? Because one of the hardest things to do as a human, and for me as a woman, is to give ourselves permission to crack on. When what we're doing so often is seeking that validation from other people because we perceive that validation is what's going to give us the permission to crack on. And it takes you a whole heap of time to suddenly go, oh, actually, it doesn't matter what everybody else says. The only person that can believe it, that to move forward, to take action, is yourself. And
Yeah.
my oh my, is that really hard. One of the things that really got me nodding when I started reading your book was when we start talking about being stuck in the stories that we have, and that that different thing of how we're brought up with the wants.
Mm,
What we want, we're told actually that's not what we should have, and there's supposed
mm,
to be's. And is
mm,
that
mm.
something that you've experienced as time's gone on through your life journey or work journey? Is it something that as all of a sudden the shutters have come off and you've gone, blimey, this is it?
Mm. Well, I mean, one of the things I say in the book is, I spent my life working with adults stuck in stories that they didn't write, but didn't know how to rewrite and didn't feel allowed to rewrite on their own. And, I start the book by saying you're imprinted with a story. We all are. We come fitted with cultural, family, gender-based expectations and rules, most of which are unspoken, right? It's not like somebody sits you down early on and says, okay, this is who you're allowed to be, and this is what you're allowed to do. Some of it gets stated, but most of it just gets baked in.
Yeah.
And so we don't even explicitly acknowledge it or engage with it. It's like this shadow set of boundaries that shapes our choices in many cases without us even consciously engaging with it. So the theme of permission, the more that I worked with it, the more I found that it sort of took that implicit should story, those implicit rules, and made them explicit. So when you're facing a choice or a decision or engaging with something, that you want to do, and you sort of ask yourself, am I allowed? And then it'll be like, oh, yeah, I mean, of course I am. But then, whoa, wait a second. They're actually a built-in set of fears, concerns, boundaries that I have that keep me from going there at the rate that I want to, with the boldness that I want to. So, and of course, I've experienced that in my own life all the time. And it's not for me, it's a practice of kind of engaging with this baked in story that you have. And I think that's a lot of what you're doing here with and for women is kind of saying, let's get explicit about these rules that we believe we have to follow. And as you say, the approval from others that we're seeking that we think is going to allow us to create our own story. But in fact, it only keeps us more stuck in that approval seeking mode. And we can talk, I think, a lot about how, yes, I do think it affects women most profoundly in many ways.
And it's that baked inness that we don't register, I think.
Right.
We go through life where we almost accept it and we don't explore it and we
Mm,
don't question it either. We're very good as women at not questioning it because there's so many other things that take our attention. We move from this to that to the next thing to the next thing. And then often we can get to a certain, I call them plot twists, and then it's like, oh, hang on a second. And then we're almost forced into having
right.
it and forced into going, right, okay, what does this mean for me going forward? And I loved what you said about the fact that we're imprinted with a story. And it made me think of something I was listening to with Simon Sinek a couple of days ago. And he was talking about his why. And obviously he talks about his why all the time. And one of the things that he said was, he said, our why never changes. We start with
Mm,
the why and it's always part of us. And whether we're 15 or 50, our why never changes. And my little spidey senses are going, no, it does, because actually,
oh,
especially as women,
oh,
actually your why changes all the time because I've got to 52 and gone, actually, there's this thing that I want to do that's different, or there's that thing now that I want to give myself permission to. So I was really
yeah.
intrigued by what you think about it. If we're imprinted and then our why is given, surely we can
Yeah.
change.
Yeah, I have a real, as you just had a visceral reaction to this fixed idea of capital WY or capital P purpose. I don't find it useful for most people. I think it's a very linear sort of fixed mindset that suggests that there's one reason for you to be here. And once you figure that out, you've unlocked some golden key that will allow you to do what you're meant to do. I've always found, as you're describing, an evolving sense of purpose, an evolving sense of meaning that takes different shape in different ways. And in my work, both with groups and with individuals, I find that idea that you've got to have this, foundational sense of who you are, it really kind of limits people more than letting them go out and explore. And to me, that's what's so critical. Yeah, this whole book is about a far more adaptive, exploratory, creative approach to your life that is a process of you routinely engaging with the evolving set of the world because it's changing so fast that I don't think anybody can walk through it with this kind of, even the whole North Star thing. I'm a little bit like, I'm not sure these things are useful right now. I think it's a far more navigational, wayfinding sort of experience of being alive, and that's what's freaking us out. Is that we've got this idea that there's this linear path towards this big, sunlight in the future, and that's where we head. And instead, it feels like we're scrambling around trying to, you know, figure things out, make things up, shift and change. And a lot of the people I work with are like, oh, I think there's something wrong with me. Like I feel inadequate, that I don't have that I don't, it all doesn't feel more seamless. This, all the sort of imposter syndrome and all of that to me is just a practice of being alive right now and stepping into new spaces and finding new things. And a lot of what I wanted to achieve with the book is to normalize the reality that being alive in this moment is going to involve a lot of confusion and figuring things out and allowing yourself to experiment, think small as some of the permissions are. And that's a process of discovery. That is not a, oh, I've worked it out and now I just deduce my path from there. So yeah, I have the same reaction that you have.
Winning. Well, I knew we'd know best anyway. So I know how
Of
many
course. Of
course
course.
we know best. And what
Of
you said there about practice, and I think that's the thing that we miss as well quite a lot, is that we're so stuck on what it should be and looking at this goal of and then knowing, you talk a lot about adulting, which is one of my favorite words. I often say the adulting manual got lost, when actually there's no such thing. And we look at this is what it should look like, but actually it's the practice of now that counts, and we forget that the practice of what's going on now is the beautiful thing. And yeah, it comes with all the life in, and it comes with the rocking in the corner, and it comes with screaming for fuck's sake in the corner and all the other stuff. But actually, that the one of the things that I've often thought about myself is I've often gone, well, I'm just winging it. But then if we reframe that, is what we're supposed to be doing, because we're exploring it and we're experimenting and we're practicing, and that's the permission we need to give ourselves.
Totally. It's like we're all winging it. And what does winging it mean anyway? In a world where, no, our lives are not going to look like our parents or our grandparents, where they, from the outside, it appeared that they were on this sort of, escalator to increasing status and security. And we look at that and go, oh my God, I'm busy like scrambling to find you know, the exit from wherever I am now. And it's like this is a new reality. And I think, Sarah, this is a particularly important discussion for girls and for women. Because here's what I observe. And I've got a 17-year-old son and a 14-year-old son. And so I'm watching their female counterparts who are the highest achievers in the school, who tick all the boxes, who get all the A's and all the extras. That's where the script is flipped over the past several decades, which is at school level, girls are now, outperforming boys in huge numbers. So what are they learning how to do? They're learning how to go for all the external metrics and get all the marks and get all the praise and all the recognition. And then they go, ha, I'm sorted. Well, are we seeing that is translating into increased power and authority and no. So I sit there in all of these, rewards, valedictory sessions and where the girls are all standing up and we're clapping for them because they got all the A's and everything looks good and everything has to look good. And the minute it doesn't look good, and the minute they go out to the real world where it's messy and you've got to fight for things and people are not going to like you and nobody's giving you an A, everything crumbles. Oh my God, but wait a second. I was supposed to be perfect and it's not perfect. And I think in a strange way, that's where I look at my sons who, are not that. They're not reaching for the A's. But guess what? They've got all the confidence in the world that they will figure things out. They'll go out, they'll make it happen. And I talk a lot about this as shifting, especially young girls and women, from this achievement mindset to an authority mindset,
Yeah.
which is a totally different thing. It's the willingness to take the risks, to have the hard conversations, to stand up in front of everybody and piss a few people off, to be a little bit out there, not to be the perfect person with all the sort of awards on her wall, because life is not like that. And I really worry that, we've got this generation of young women coming up who are killing it at school, but who are so wired to want the perfect life where they get all the rewards that they're not actually being trained to exist in a very messy world of work. And that's where I think it really starts to kill us, because we chase all that approval and we chase all that praise. And actually, it just creates self-limiting,
Yeah.
because you never prepare yourself for winging it, for making it up, for being unpopular, for doing all the things that are actually required in the real world to pursue what matters to you.
And that it is a very, very worrying place, because you only have to look around to see that this um perception of what looks good is the power tool of today. And
Right.
they're one of the things that really does concern me, because it's that looking good versus that feeling good, which I think has been
Mm,
part of our history for an awful long time. But I think it's amplified now, with the girls that are
mm,
wearing all this ridiculous makeup and the skincare that's going on for 7-year-olds, which is going to damage the skin beyond belief when they're blooming 57. And that feeling good, we don't often ask ourselves what feels good. And then when it's
yeah.
down to it and we start to ask ourselves, it's a bit like, well, actually, I don't know, because then we go back into the shoulds of, well, I should be up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I should be doing exercise and I should be
Right.
looking at the sunset and I should be writing the journal. And one of the things with one of the fab women that I've coached recently, she was talking about this perfectionist trap that she got
Mm,
and it was one of the feelings that she had when we started to talk about goal setting. And she was like, I really struggle with goal setting. And I was like, yeah, great, because so many of the people that I work with do struggle with goal setting, because there isn't actually anything out there that says this is where you should be. And
right.
we reframed it and we talked about, actually, maybe it's about how you want to feel. And the
Mm,
minute we talk about goal setting as, well, I want to feel this way, it
mm,
becomes so different, because you have a new set of guiding principles, because you have a set of guiding principles that go, actually, for me at 52, with everything that's going on with menopause and life is pretty lifey at the moment for me, for me, it's stillness. It's stillness and
mm,
it's
mm,
peace.
mm.
10 years ago, it was probably something completely different. And
Right.
and it's that reassessing and that practice that you talk about is so important. And one of the things that you say in your book, which I absolutely love, is how we move from seeking permission to self-permission. How do we do that?
Yeah, that's the work. And as you say, I think particularly if you've been wired, which we all have, to, we were rewarded for chasing something external to us. I mean, I love the reframe of the goal to a feeling, to a sort of embodied internal experience of life, rather than somebody outside of you saying, well done, because that's how we train ourselves right from the beginning, that that's what good looks like. And yeah, as you say, absolutely, you get to people who are mid-age who've never engaged with that internal experience, that what I would call finding your way, which rather than following a way. So to me, it's a practice of very, very small steps towards listening in, like just that. And let's start with permission number one, be willful, which is listening into what you want, listening into what your desires are, because especially for women and girls, but not at all exclusively, from a very early age, we outsource them. And that's exactly what you've described with 7-year-olds who want perfect skin is they've taken a cultural narrative, absorbed it, and now, are chasing it. And so what I try and do with people is to say, let's start with very small decisions. Let's start with things that are low consequence, low risk, because the other thing is that these things, as you said earlier, generally come up when we've hit a wall, when we've reached the end of something. And by that point, we're in sort of survival mode. We're looking to make a big decision that we think is going to change everything. And I want people to approach this more as, almost like they would their own personal fitness. Like I see this as a form of 21st century fitness, where you are training yourself to stretch, to build the muscle memory, to make intentional choices that are far more aligned with you than they are with a narrative that's either outdated or doesn't serve or suit you anymore. So, I talk a lot about weekends as great times to dig into what do I want? What are some little experiments that I want to run? Try new things, do new things. And the simple practice of first asking yourself, what do I want? And it can be as simple as, you know, what do I want for lunch? Really, it can. And you just, sit with yourself first before doing what we know so many people do, which is looking around and going, I don't know. What do you want? I don't know. What do you want? And then, sure, you can ask other people, but then you come back around into yourself. And then you create a small practice of acting on that. You
Yeah.
know, there's these tiny little, and I have a colleague who's a neuroscientist who talks about micro permissions as the key to kind of unlocking a little bit more plasticity. So not being so fixed, not defaulting as, a matter of course, but actually becoming heightened and aware of how you are moving through things. And I would really love for people to focus on days, just days, not big old lofty life decisions. Because in my 30 years of working with people around growth and change, if you don't have the muscle to figure out how you want to spend your days, then I don't want to get into a conversation about what's your why. Like, I really don't. I would love for you to just string together 7 fabulous days. And then let's come back and have a conversation, as you described earlier, about what feels good, what matters to you, what switches you on. Like, I think we abstract so much of this when what we actually need to do is lean into the meaty work of, doing things that stimulate us, that create meaning for us, that put us into contact with other people. Those are active choices, not ruminations about meaning and purpose. So, I, especially with young people too, I'm always like, go out, go do things. Get active in your world and start to navigate it super intentionally and see what comes up for you. Um, yeah, because I think so often what we lump as kind of personal development or growth becomes this kind of heavy process of figuring out big life questions. And guess what? We rarely do. We end up just sitting in cycles. And so I'm more in a sort of active, reflective mode. I call it exploration, introspection of go out, do something, come back, reflect, and just, yeah, put yourself amongst it and then see what comes up for you.
And that is active living, isn't it? We get so wrapped up with what's happening tomorrow and the day after and the day after that, that we forget that actually the only time we've got is now. And this is where we need to be actively intentional about what we're doing now and what we're doing
Yeah.
next. And the more that we can then acknowledge that, appreciate it, or know what we want to do differently, then that leads on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And I think you're so right that we need to call out more this whole what's your purpose, because it again it provides us with another shackle to wrap ourselves up in and to then beat ourselves up with. I don't have a purpose. Like me and one of my best mates, we always used to do a lot of running, and we always use running as our sort of therapy sessions. So we're running really slowly, and we're chatting away, and we were all like, "Oh my God, all these people that have got purpose, and my purpose is to get home and figure out what's for tea and not lose
Right.
shit with the kids." Do you know what I
Yeah. 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 Right. That's my real life. I don't know what yours is.
mean?
Yeah. felt two things in writing this that were really like trying to shift the narrative around human growth and change. And one is that it's always painful and heavy. And actually, I think what I want to do is unlock more pleasure in this, that you're allowed to go out and kind of bring things into your life, do things with your life that feel good. And guess what? That's a virtuous cycle that compounds with you feeling more energetic, more optimistic, more powerful, more agentic. Sitting in your bed and journaling about your purpose is not going to unlock new capability within you. And no brilliant insight leads, you into a new room in your life. That involves you physically moving into a new space. And that was the other thing I wanted to bring into it, which, is it is a living active experience. It is not like a meditation. So, into your body, out of your head, into the world, into pleasure, into things that start to switch on some of your most powerful creative capabilities, and then see what happens, right? See what happens from that place. But you can't, you've got to act your way in to new ways of being and seeing. You can't think your way there. And that is a message that I really particularly want to get to younger people, to younger girls who I think will spend a lot of time, sitting and studying and doing all the right things, or, putting the makeup on or taking the selfies. And it's like, go out and live, make some mistakes, disappoint some people. As I said earlier, piss some people off. It's okay. You are not a product for consumption. You are an active player in your own story. So go and start writing it, okay? Because I think we set ourselves up very early to be consumed by others. And that's a very passive place to be. And, if anything, one of the permissions that I want to come out of this with be willful, go astray is no, you're writing this, you're creating this, do it.
Yeah. And be the active participant in your own life. And
Yeah.
that took me a hell of a long time to realize. And, I often talk about our midlife stage as a reawakening, as opposed to, actually this whole heavy thing that everyone talks about with menopause. And yeah, there is the rage and all that sort of stuff. But a lot of it is this reawakening of, hang on a second, I've got a choice now to be active in this and to make the most of it. And that's how I'm going to crack on. And one of the
Mm,
things that you said that I absolutely loved is it's not a rebellion. It's not a you're a lot more polite than me. It's not an F you. It's a yay me. And
Right.
that really sat with me because I also struggle when people talk about, we get to midlife and it's this rebellion because actually
Mm,
maybe it's just coming home to yourself. And it's
yeah.
not about rebelling. It's just about actively living and being intentional about what you want to do and how you want to behave and how you want to live. But the hard work is figuring that bit out, isn't it? It's knowing what that is. And then it's going, do you know what? This is what it is. And then I'm going to pursue it today and tomorrow and the day after and how we move forward from there.
Yeah, totally. And I think that was the kind of binary that was set up to keep us sticking to the old story, which is anything that isn't, the familiar script is somehow rebellious. And I think, particularly with the familiar scripts unraveling around us, with new possibilities opening up, you've mentioned menopause as, this is the story of our time. We are not experiencing our mother's menopause. Wow. Okay. So what are we going to do with it? What are we going to do with this new story around menopause? And one of the things I say in the book is don't act like you've got two choices when in fact you've got 20. You've got lots of choices right now, right? You don't need to go and sit in your room and, sweat in silence. You can make intentional choices to navigate this differently. And I think the figuring out again doesn't come through some master plan. I again see so many women because hello, that's me too, who want to, find the big thing. Oh, well, I need to go get my career back, or I need this big thing that's going to be the counterweight to my parenting role, which has consumed me for the last 2 decades. And it's like, no, chances are you're not going to find that big thing. Here again, start putting yourself into new places, right? Because it's the isolation and the absence of new stimulants that leaves us feeling like we don't know what to do and we don't have options. Go join, a new class, go do an online course, just go and walk in a different park, go and start to physically stretch out the parameters of your life and then be super intentional about observing. And yes, perhaps capturing if it feels natural for you, what's coming up for you in terms of what's interesting. How do you want to feel? Great framing, what is it that you want to feel for the next, and it doesn't have to be 20 years of my life. It can be, I'm going to take this in 6 months increments. And, maybe like you, it's like, actually, I just want to feel at peace for 6 months or 3 months, and then I'll re engage. So for me, that's going to look like quiet walks, more bath time, downloading a lot of podcasts and sitting by myself and listening to them. Cool. Great. That's you doing you, and that's totally fine. But, that answer comes from you getting in touch with how you want to feel and then putting yourself in places where you can sort of cultivate an understanding of what that might look like in real time.
And that is that comes back to the exploration that we need to do, because we're not gonna know against the rule book but what makes us feel good or what we enjoy. And so this year for me in business, I've run my own business for 23 years, and it's always been, in the past couple of years, the zeitgeist out there has been sales, 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 sales. And actually, I found myself being sucked into this hideous place of, I wasn't feeling like I was good enough at what I did because I wasn't earning this or doing this.
Right.
And and at the beginning of this year, I sat down with myself and I said, right, okay, what do I want out of this year? And it was connection, collaboration, and conversation. And then
Mm,
I was like, right, okay. And so I started the podcast, and it's something that had been niggling my noggin for 2 years, and I've been talking about it and I've been thinking about it. And then I just did it. And that's
mm,
put me into, as you've discussed, new spaces
mm,
that has I've met amazing women like yourself and inhaled all this new stuff that has given me joy and has given me
mm.
meaning. And but I wouldn't have done that if I'd not taken the action to do something. So that
Yeah.
actionable intent is so critical to how we crack on.
Oh, it's just, if there's one thing that became so clear for me in all of my work, that actionable intent, like intentional action, agency, it's a word that's come up right now into the mainstream, and a lot of people are like, "What?" And now we're hearing it with agentic AI, but you just described it in one. I want I act in a way that's aligned with my want. I don't sit there and go, "Ooh, but, oh, can I? Oh, should I? Oh, what if?" No, I do it. And guess what? If I record one podcast episode and it's a total disaster and I hate it, then I stop doing it and I reorient and I keep moving on. It's, my permissions to experiment and think small and forget about the future. You've just captured them in that example, which is, I have to try things that stretch out my sense of my capability and the world's possibility in order for me to actively grow and change. It isn't a book lesson, it's an earned experience and an earned capability. And so the more that we green light ourselves to, okay, I'm going to try it. Okay, I'm going to do it. Okay, I'm going to see how it feels. It doesn't all have to be life changing. It doesn't mean that you found your new vocation as a podcaster. It means that you've created something that's bringing meaning and value. And I think not to underestimate the power of creating something and putting it into the world. It's a magnet. It starts to draw like-minded people to you. I'm experiencing the same thing with my book. And it's my second book, so I experienced it once before where I was like, "Oh, interesting. Okay, so basically I'm just putting this thing out into the world and it's going to attract people." And those people will be people who I'll be able to have connection with because there's something in it that's resonant for them. So, and that can be small things again. It doesn't have to be a big thing. It can be, I'm going to put out, a conversation or a cake or something, and I'm going to see who wants it.
Yeah.
And once I do that, I'm then going to grow my community. So the permission to explore, to experiment, gosh, it sounds so basic, but it really isn't.
And it's the one that I think we find really difficult to do. Now, before we go, we need to talk about the 10 permissions. So
Mm.
we've got be willful, go astray, take it outside, experiment, feel your way, forget about the future or forget about future, think small, travel light, look for trouble, and make believe. And what I love about the way you've written, Jillian, is that it's about, when you often read some of these books, it's like they come up with new rules, whereas the your 10 permissions are ways of potentially approaching things. So do you have a favorite?
No, I think, it depends on the day and the conversation. And I really wanted it to be like the hard work for me was distilling it down to something that felt light and easy to engage with, because I wanted it to be the kind of thing that maybe you'd pick it back up again and you'd go back to travel light at a moment that maybe that felt right for you. And you just look at that and say, what does that mean for me right now? And I do think I've picked that one on purpose because I think it's so important for women who accumulate over the years these stories. And as you said, gosh, now it's starting at 7, for goodness sakes, about what you're supposed to look like and what beauty is and what good is. And that gets heavier and heavier and heavier to the point that I gave a talk the other day about the glass ceiling. I was like, it's just forget about it. Most women, by the time they've reached that point, are too exhausted to try and break anything.
Yeah.
So it's us and our relationship with ourselves and all the crap that we accumulate as we go that limits our ability to actually feel nimble and powerful and able to kind of do different things. So, um, I feel like I'd love for it to be the kind of thing where different things will resonate at different times. But I think that one for me is something that I keep working on because I got those stories too. And having just released a book and getting stuck in my own head of, oh, hey, will people like it? What if it doesn't? What if people think I'm stupid? What if it's taken me a daily practice of believing in my own authority to keep going with it and to not hide and go, oh, forget it. I'm too afraid to keep going out further and further and further with it. So I keep trying to find the lightness of it's okay, just allow it to connect you to people who matter and maybe that's all it needs to do.
And travel light is so hard to do, isn't it? Like all these things are really hard to do, especially if you've, as a woman, you've gone through the years and you've, like you say, that accumulation of stuff. And even now, in my 50s, I was reading something the other day about, we're all pro aging and we want to live well. That's what we want to do. We want to live well for as long as blinking possible. I want to climb mountains when I'm 90. But then what's happening to the zeitgeist is they're going, oh, here's all these women that have potentially got
Yeah,
disposable income that want to live well. So let's now give them more things that they now
right.
accumulate, which is then making us go, oh my God, am I not achieving if I'm not doing this? And do I need to do that? And I love what you've said about the fact that you still have to do the daily practice, because I think that's really important for listeners to hear, is that you don't get to a certain point and go, I've nailed it now, everybody. Here we are.
Mm. No, no, not at all. Well, I haven't. It's this I would describe it as a routine process of interrupting the narrative. Just routinely, little ways, interrupted, interrupted, interrupted. Like I take my own advice. I verbalize and I say in the book, I'm a huge fan of self-talk. There's lots of science behind it, and I talk to myself about who I'm allowed to be and how I'm allowed to show up. And when my myself goes, but, is it okay? Are you going to be safe there? Because I think that's what a lot of this is about, Am I going to be safe out on a bigger stage? Am I going to be safe in a public space where people will have opinions, where people won't like me? And I think if you come right back down to it, for most women, our self-limiting revolves around those concepts of being liked and being approved of. And so learning to live with that and hold that and come into self over and over and over again of it's okay. Um, you can carry some of that with you. You can more than you think you can. You're able to deal with somebody having a negative review or having a negative opinion of you or saying, what is she on about? Like, it's all right. Um, it's an interruption and a recalibration. And I will say this again, when it gets very bad for me, I put myself out into the world. I get out of this space, I get out of this space, and I go and do something. And invariably, I find that that shifts the energy for me, that I'm no longer in what if mode and I'm down into, the real world is a place where I can continue to, you know, find meaning, feel good, engage with things that matter. And I think that's really important because, again, a lot of women also will self-isolate quite a lot. And we need to make sure that we keep putting ourselves into physical spaces where, that's where we start to kind of create a lot of the reinforcing um, habits and energies that will allow us to keep going.
And that power of getting out of your head and into environments is it's such a small shift, but it's so important, and that, and again, it becomes the narrative that we listen to. But, we know that when we're talking about the logical levels of how we move forward and what alignment looks like, and going back to how we want to change anything, the first thing that we can do is shift our environment, whether that's making
Hmm.
yourself a brew, whether it's getting outside, whether it's, last week I sat in the car with the heated seats on and just listened to the rain coming down and actually
Lovely.
acknowledged that that felt peaceful in that moment. So it's the interruption of it, but then I
Mm.
think it's also intentionally noticing when it does feel good, because I think we're really good as humans and women at forgetting that bit to close the loop. We're really
Yes.
questioning, we're really good at potentially exploring. I think we get better at it. Um,
Yep.
but I think the thing that again is the bit we need to work on even harder is closing a loop and going, I have done that thing. And actually, how did that feel? Oh, it felt
Mm.
good. And then you put that into your brain, and then your brain goes, oh, let's do that again then.
Right. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I completely agree. And it's again, my neuroscientist friend will, describe that as this kind of meta process of observing self in new conditions. And as you say, the one thing that's easiest for us to shift is our physical environment. Create a new input, see what happens. Then, as you say, close the loop with, oh, I like that. Oh, I don't like that. Oh, that's interesting. What do I not like about that? What do I like about that? Become, an active learner and a curious observer of self, not for the purposes of becoming narcissistic and self-obsessed, but because that is the way that you not only operate from your best and most, sort of powerful place, but gosh, you're then able to show up to other people in the ways that create the most mutually satisfying relationships and things like that. So yeah, I one of the things that there are a couple of things that I'm kind of playing around with as a part of the 10 permissions work. And one is something I'm calling permissions parties. I'm hosting two of them this week. Because I think I want to play around with people coming together in ways that feel light. And it doesn't matter where it is. It doesn't have to be like a party. I'm doing one in a yoga studio on a Sunday morning that's just like women, but not being alone, not feeling heavy, not feeling like I'm the only one doing this, being able to externalize the pieces of my story that I need to kind of look at with a little bit more curiosity. But I think it's an opportunity for us to kind of co-create and give each other permission in some ways to keep going in whatever direction that we need to. The other is around travel. and exploration, a word we've used a lot today. I mean, travel has been probably the biggest game changer in my life in terms of if you want to accelerate your own neuroplasticity, your own adaptability, kind of hack into your ability to find your way through new spaces, put yourself in a new place. And it doesn't have to be exotic. It can just be the place on the other side of town that you never go to. But you are actively rewiring something when you put yourself into a place where you've got to learn, make decisions, rely on intuition. There's so many virtuous elements to physically putting yourself in new places that, one of my big ambitions for this is to explore the way that travel can be, a permission accelerant, an adaptive accelerant, because it's proven that for me in my life. And I think, especially right now when the world feels scary and so many of us are inclined to kind of recoil from it, we actually need to step even more into it. We
Yeah.
got to put ourselves out there because that's how we're going to make our best contribution.
I love it. And two of my favorite words there that you've mentioned, curiosity. If we can reframe what we're thinking, and even if we reframe conflict to curiosity, then we're
Mm,
curious about what we learn from it, and we're
mm,
curious about how we approach it. And the more that we can build curiosity into our lives, the better we then explore everything. And then
yeah.
that takes courage. And courage is the other thing that then the minute that we gift ourselves a little bit of courage and we go, do you know what? I am going to be courageous and go and sit in that coffee shop on my own, or book the flight or do whatever it is, then that builds the confidence and the self-belief to give you permission. They're all so closely linked, aren't they?
They are.
Yeah.
They are. And, they went. And I think each one of those things, if I'd love for whoever's listening to pause and to think about in their own life when they've experienced those feelings or exercised those faculties of curiosity, of the courage to do the thing that you wanted to do. Um, those are probably some of your best moments, aren't they? They're when you feel most alive. And, I think one of the sad parts of the sort of default story for so many of us, and particularly women, like if I think about my mother, it was this gradual process of feeling less and less alive, less and less powerful, less able to go out and craft a life, even in the smallest ways that felt satisfying and meaningful. And so, as you said earlier, this is not rocket science. This is, again, a lot of people talking about, going back to stuff that kids do intuitively. And yet, when it comes to a point, and I witnessed this in my teen sons, the older you get, the more all of that stuff gets sapped out. And you actually get discouraged from it. You get discouraged from being courageous because, oh, it's risky. You get discouraged from being curious because, oh, why are you asking questions? And we go from encouraging these super, curious little young things to wanting teenagers to sit in a chair and shut up.
Yeah.
And it's like, what we're not training human widgets anymore. We are trying to put young people out into the world who are going to be able to make meaning and value with and for each other. So that is all about curiosity and courage. And, I really hope that the current state of the world is going to force that conversation, um, and force us to kind of be a little bit more intentional about how we're bringing up young people and how we're allowing ourselves to navigate our own lives.
Yeah. Oh, and and that's a question that we need to ask ourselves constantly, because the more we ask the
Mm.
questions, the more that we do different things. I could talk about this with you, and I would love to be involved in your permission parties. I'll host one for you in Manchester. Absolutely.
Please.
Love to do that. That sounds ace. I could talk about this for hours with Jillian, but I'm very conscious that you have got to wing your way into London today. You've got various
I
things
do.
to do. As I ask all my guests, and this is continuing into season 2 of the podcast, what their 6-word memoir is. And of course, the 6-word memoir comes from the shortest story ever told by the wonderful Ernest Hemingway. So, Jillian, as we close today's episode, what is your 6-word memoir?
She gave herself permission to explore.
I can't say anything to it because it's so brilliant. Imagine.
I also think it kind of sums it up, right?
Does. And imagine if we all, everyone that's listening to this today, just simply granted themselves that permission today. What a difference it would be and how people would feel. Jillian, thank you so much for being a guest on It's Got Pockets. It's been absolutely brilliant. I really appreciate you, and I am inhaling this book.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. I've loved this, and I'm so appreciative of the work you're doing. And I think you are an incredible kind of permission giver by virtue of the conversations that you're hosting. So thank you for letting me be a part of them.
Thank you so much. The book is, of course, called 10 Permissions, and the author is, of course, the marvellous, the fantastic Jillian Reilly. Thank you so much for today.
For anybody listening globally, it's in Barnes & Noble in the US, on Amazon, and again, can be ordered from any independent bookstores.
This episode has been sponsored by Birkdale Insurance Group, a people-first business with a powerhouse of brilliant, talented female board members bucking that male-dominated financial services trend. You can find out more in the show notes and at birkdaleinsuranceGroup.co.uk. Well, that's us for today. If something nudged you, brilliant! That's good. That's the whole point. A little moment of reflection, a little bit of peace, a little bit of power in your pocket. And if you're a woman with experience, running a business, leading a team, holding the blinking sky up, playing whack-a-mole at any given moment, and you're ready for a room that actually gets it, come and join us inside the Found Her Fire Society and Collective. Thanks for listening.